They don't even have anywhere to put the wheat. I mean, it's crazy. We were in Ukraine this week, and we were going to farmers with warehouses that were full of last year's wheat, and they're taking in the new crops now, and they don't have anywhere to put it.
The Navy has been guarding the port of Odessa, and Ukraine's access to the Black Sea is being blocked by Russian forces as well, leaving ships filled with enough grain to feed millions of people to gather dust. This is all while the director of the UN World Food Programme is warning that 50 million people over 45 countries are now just one step away from famine. But after talks in Turkey last week, could we be closer to finding a solution? Let's find out with the Sunday Times' Middle East correspondent Louise Callaghan, who joins us now. Morning, Louise.
Hi, good morning.
Hello. Is there any breakthrough in discussions at all, Louise? We've got a huge amount of grain and crops sitting in Odessa and other ports as well that at the moment is not going anywhere.
Right. I mean, with the discussions in Istanbul last week, I think there was a kind of, rather than a breakthrough, I'd say more of a kind of glimpse of hope, whereas, discussions did seem to be going relatively well, and they've said that they're going to meet again next week and talk again. But fundamentally, there's some really, really, really big problems in the way of starting grain exports from Ukraine. One of the really big ones is that Russia, while sitting down and having negotiations in Istanbul, is still, firing loads of missiles and rockets at Ukraine, and particularly Ukrainian ports. So while kind of on one hand saying, oh yes, well, we're going to be very sensible about this and have a sit down and figure out a way to get the grain out of the ports, they're also, mining the Black Sea and bombing ports. So it's very hard to kind of figure out a way in which this is going to move forward.
And in terms of the specifics, at one point it had been touted that that Turkey would sort of lead a safe passage of travel out of Ukraine through the Black Sea, that there would be a kind of a grain corridor, I suppose, in terms of vessels being able to transport grain out of the country. Is that still being discussed, or are there any other ideas?
Yeah, that's still being discussed, and it's possible. None of these things are completely impossible, but it just becomes very, very difficult to imagine how it would work when you see the completely insane scale of exports that we're talking about. This is not a couple of ships of grain that we're talking about that could go through some kind of corridor, with ceasefire and all like over that corridor and all of the communications and planning that would require. This is a completely incredibly enormous amount of wheat. And it's so big that the Ukrainians and lots of international partners have been working nonstop since the war started to try and figure out ways to get it out of the country. So they send a lot over road and rail, and also now recently up the Danube through the river ports that were accessible since the liberation of Snake Island. But it's still just a kind of drop in the ocean. So even with the really major new routes that they've created over land and up the rivers, it's still really, really difficult to get all the grain out. So yeah, sure. I mean, it would require just such an absurdly large effort and a complete change in the situation on the ground in order to be able to get out very large amounts of grain through the Black Sea.
Yeah, and in peacetime, Ukraine provides 10% of global wheat exports, 12% of maize and 37% of sunflower oil. That is, of course, crucial. And I'm guessing that it's already having an effect, particularly over in Africa. We know that. But is it starting to have an effect in the UK and in other European countries as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, if you go to the supermarket, you can see the rise in prices of, for example, sunflower oil has already happened, and many other goods. And I think there's only more price rises coming as Ukraine struggles to keep exporting its raw goods.
Yeah.
And, the wheat harvest has been going on now, and we're in a situation where farmers are going to have to decide, are you going to plant the crops for next year? Is it worth it? Are we going to be able to get rid of it?
Whether it's worth it or not, yeah, because they must be demotivated by this, because they can't make an income if they can't sell it, and they won't be able to sell it if there's already a huge grain supply waiting for transit.
Yeah, of course, and they don't even have anywhere to put the wheat. I mean, it's crazy. We were in Ukraine this week, and we were going to farmers with warehouses that were full of last year's wheat, and they're taking in the new crops now, and they don't have anywhere to put it. They're just putting it in kind of random outbuildings at this point. So you can kind of understand that they are worried whether shall we plant these crops? Shall I collect the corn, or 'cause I think corn you can leave in fields over the year. Are they going to do that? Are they going to take it in? Are they going to try and sell it overland? And, the prices are fluctuating dramatically. So a lot of farmers are thinking, okay, well, even if there is a way that I can sell some of my
Yeah.
crop, it's not going to sell for very much money.